The dust storm on Kepler 442b had been raging for 3 days. Dr. Hyen-Woo Park pressed his face against the small window of the research station and watched the red sand whip across the alien landscape. The storm was finally dying down, which meant they could get back to work. Hyen-Woo had been waiting for this moment for weeks. The deep ground scans had shown something unusual buried beneath the crystalline formations near the North Ridge. Something that did not belong to this world's natural geology. Something old. "The storm is clearing," called So-Young Kim from across the small room. She was bent over her computer, working on language patterns from their last dig site. Her black hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and she wore the same dusty work clothes they all lived in out here on the edge of human space. "Good," Hyen-Woo replied. "We can finally see what's down there." The third member of their team, Dong-Min Lee, looked up from his equipment checks. The soil samples from yesterday showed traces of worked stone, not natural rock formation. Someone built something down there. Hyen-Woo nodded. In his 15 years as a xenarchaeologist, he had learned to trust his instincts. And his instincts told him this discovery would be important. Very important. 2 hours later, they were suited up and walking across the barren landscape toward the dig site. The alien sun cast strange shadows through the thin atmosphere. Their boots crunched on the crystalline sand that covered everything. "On this world, look at those formations," Dong-Min said, pointing to the tall crystal spires that jutted from the ground like frozen lightning. "They're not random. There's a pattern here." So-Young stopped walking and pulled out her scanner. "He's right. These crystals form a perfect spiral. Someone arranged them this way." Hyen-Woo felt his pulse quicken. Arranged crystals meant intelligence. Intelligence meant civilization. And civilization meant they had found exactly what they came looking for. They reached the dig site where their automated excavators had been working before the storm hit. The machines had carved a deep pit into the ground, revealing layers of sediment that told the story of this world's history. But at the bottom of the pit, something glinted in the alien sunlight. "There," Hyen-Woo said, pointing down into the excavation. "Do you see it?" So-Young peered down into the pit. "Is that metal?" "Stone," Dong-Min corrected, "but worked stone, carved." They rappelled down into the pit using their climbing gear. Up close, the object was even more impressive. It was a large stone tablet, perfectly rectangular, covered in intricate symbols that had been carved deep into its surface. The stone itself was unlike anything they had seen on this world. It was dark blue, almost black, and it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "This is incredible," So-Young whispered, running her gloved fingers over the symbols. "Look at the precision of these carvings. Whoever made this had advanced tools." Hyen-Woo carefully brushed away the accumulated dust and sand. More symbols became visible. Row after row of alien writing covered the entire surface of the tablet. "How old do you think it is?" Dong-Min was taking readings with his geological scanner. "The sediment layers suggest it's been buried for at least 50,000 years. Maybe more. 50,000 years, Hyen-Woo repeated. "That means this civilization was here long before humans even left Earth." They spent the next several hours carefully excavating around the tablet. They found more stones buried nearby. 5 tablets in total, each one covered in the same mysterious writing. "We need to get these back to the station," Hyen-Woo said. "So-Young, how long will it take you to start working on the translation?" "I can begin immediately," she replied. "But this script is unlike anything in our databases. It could take weeks or months to decode." They used their heavy lifting equipment to move the tablets back to the research station. Each stone was incredibly heavy, as if it was made from some dense material that did not exist in their periodic table. That evening, So Young worked late into the night on the first tablet. She used every translation program and linguistic analysis tool available to their small outpost. Hyun Woo brought her coffee and watched over her shoulder as patterns began to emerge on her computer screen. "I think I'm starting to see something," she said, pointing to clusters of symbols that appeared repeatedly. "These marks here seem to represent numbers. And these longer sequences might be names or places. What kind of names? Star systems, I think. Look at this pattern here. It appears exactly 17 times on the first tablet, always followed by these same 4 symbols." Hyun Woo studied the screen. "What do you think those 4 symbols mean?" "I'm not sure yet, but they appear after every star system name, like a classification or a warning." By morning, So Young had made significant progress. She had identified numerical sequences, star charts, and what appeared to be a form of galactic coordinate system. The tablets seemed to contain information about multiple worlds and civilizations across the galaxy. "These aren't just random carvings," she announced to the team over breakfast. "This is organized information, like a database or a historical record." "A record of what?" Dongmin asked. "Different species, different worlds. It's like someone was keeping track of civilizations across the galaxy." Hyun Woo felt a chill despite the warm air inside the station. "Keeping track for what purpose?" So Young hesitated. "I'm not sure, but there's something strange about the way the information is organized. It's not just describing these civilizations. It's making predictions about them." "Predictions?" "About their development, their future, their fate." She turned to face them. "And according to my preliminary analysis, these predictions have been remarkably accurate." Over the next few days, So Young worked around the clock to decode more of the tablets. She cross-referenced the star coordinates with known galactic maps and found matches with actual star systems. Systems where archaeologists had found evidence of ancient civilizations. "Look at this," she said, showing them her latest findings. "This entry describes a species from the Vega system. It predicts they will become master engineers, but will destroy themselves through environmental collapse. Archaeological evidence confirms that's exactly what happened." "How is that possible?" Hyun Woo asked. "I don't know, but it gets stranger. This entry describes a species from Proxima Centauri. It predicts they will achieve spaceflight, but will abandon their homeworld after a global war. We know from historical records that's exactly what the Proximans did." Dongmin leaned forward. "How many predictions have you verified?" 12 so far. All accurate." Hyun Woo stared at the tablets. Whoever had created these stones possessed knowledge that spanned the galaxy and stretched across tens of thousands of years. Knowledge that seemed impossible for any single civilization to possess. "There's something else," So Young said quietly. "One entry that doesn't match the others." "What do you mean?" "Most entries are neutral, just factual descriptions and predictions. But this one entry is different. It reads like a warning." She brought up the translation on her screen. The symbols seemed darker somehow, more urgent. "What does it say?" So Young looked up at them with worried eyes. "It's about a species from a small blue world in what we call the Sol system. It describes them as deceptively fragile, but impossibly stubborn. It says they are dangerously adaptive." Hyun Woo felt his blood turn cold. "The Sol system. That's our system." "Yes," So Young nodded. "The tablet is talking about humans, and it's warning other civilizations to avoid contact with us at all costs." The news from Kepler 442b reached Earth 3 weeks later. Dr. Ji-hoon Choi read the report twice before he believed what he was seeing. Ancient tablets warning about humans. Predictions that had proven accurate for dozens of alien civilizations. And most disturbing of all, a specific warning to avoid contact with humanity. Ji-hoon worked at the Terran Research Institute in Seoul, where he studied alien biology and behavior patterns. In his 10 years at the institute, he had never seen anything like this report. He immediately contacted his colleague, Dr. Hai-Won Jung, who specialized in galactic anthropology. "Have you seen the Kepler report?" he asked when she answered his call. "Just finished reading it," Hai-Won replied. "What do you make of it?" "I don't know what to make of it. Why would an ancient civilization specifically warn against humans? We hadn't even invented agriculture when these tablets were carved." Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, High Counselor Thekmar of the Velkari Confederation was having similar thoughts. But unlike the humans, Thekmar knew exactly why the ancient warnings existed. The Velkari had kept the old stories alive for thousands of years. Stories about the progenitors, the first civilization to achieve galactic awareness. Stories about their warnings and predictions. Most Velkari considered these stories to be myths and legends. But Thekmar was old enough to remember when the stories were treated as fact. "Sir," his aide approached his floating platform in the great council chamber, "we have received reports about the human expansion." "What kind of reports?" "They have sent an exploration vessel beyond their solar system. The ship has encountered difficulties, but their response is ... unusual." Thekmar's skin color shifted to a worried blue. "Show me the surveillance data." The holographic display activated, showing the human vessel Determination drifting in an asteroid field. The ship's engines were dark, and debris from micrometeor impacts scarred its hull. By all reasonable standards, the ship was lost. The crew should have activated their emergency beacons and awaited rescue. But the humans were not doing what any reasonable species would do. Captain Min-Ho Yoon stood on the bridge of the Determination, studying the damage reports. His ship had been hit by a cascade of micrometeors while trying to navigate through the asteroid field. The main engines were offline, life support was running on backup power, and their communication array was damaged. Options? Min-Ho asked his crew. Engineer Yoon-ji Shin looked up from her diagnostic pad. "Main engine control circuits are fried. We'd need replacement parts that we don't have. What about alternatives?" "I could try to reroute power through the secondary systems, but it would be dangerous. One mistake and we could lose life support entirely." Pilot Tae-Won Nam turned from his station. "Captain, we could activate the emergency beacon. The rescue ship from Mars base could reach us in 6 weeks." 6 weeks on backup life support? Min-Ho asked. "It would be tight, but possible if we reduce activity to minimum levels." Min-Ho considered their options. The safe choice was to wait for rescue. The dangerous choice was to attempt repairs with inadequate equipment and risk losing everything. Yoon-ji, how long would the repair attempt take? 72 hours of continuous work, maybe more. And our chances of success? Honestly, maybe 30%. Any other species in the galaxy would have chosen to wait for rescue. The logical choice was obvious. But Min-Ho looked around at his crew and saw the same determination in their eyes that had driven humans to leave their home planet in the first place. "We're not sitting here for 6 weeks, he announced. "Yoon-ji, start the repairs. Tae-Won, help her with whatever she needs. I'll monitor ship systems." From their hidden observation post, the Velkari watched in amazement as the humans began attempting the impossible. Yoon-ji and Tae-Won worked without rest, jury-rigging solutions that should not have worked. They cannibalized non-essential systems for spare parts. They rewired circuits in ways that violated basic engineering principles. They ignored safety protocols that existed for good reasons. After 18 hours of continuous work, Yoon-ji had managed to restore partial power to the engines. After 36 hours, she had life support running at full capacity again. After 54 hours, she had communications working well enough to contact Earth. How are they doing this? The Velkari. Observer asked his commander. I don't know, the commander replied. Their solution should not work. They're using systems in ways they were never designed for. Should we intervene? The commander's skin shifted to deep purple, the Velkari color for fear. No, do not let them know we are here. By the end of 72 hours, Yunji had accomplished something that Velkari engineers would have considered impossible. She had restored full engine power using nothing but spare parts and determination. The determination resumed its journey as if nothing had happened. Vekmar watched the surveillance recording with growing alarm. The humans had not just survived an impossible situation. They had turned it into a learning experience. Their ship was now more efficient than before the accident. Contact the Science Council, he ordered. Tell them the ancient warnings were not myths. Back on Earth, Ji-hoon was conducting his own investigation into the tablet's warnings. He had access to classified archaeological reports from across human space. Reports that painted a disturbing picture. Look at this, he told Hai-One during their weekly meeting. Archaeological evidence from 7 different star systems. All show signs of advanced civilizations that suddenly vanished between 40 and 60,000 years ago. Mass extinction events? No, more like mass evacuations. They left behind infrastructure, technology, even personal belongings, but no bodies. No signs of struggle. They just left. Hai-One studied the data. What could cause entire civilizations to abandon their homeworlds? That's what I'm trying to figure out. But look at the timing. It all corresponds with the approximate age of those tablets on Kepler 442b. You think they left because of the progenitor warnings? I think they left because they encountered something that scared them badly enough to abandon everything and hide. Ji-hoon pulled up another file. I've been analyzing the survey data from our deep space probes. We've identified 17 star systems with signs of current civilization. Advanced technology, orbital structures, energy signatures. But every time we send a probe close enough for detailed scans, the signatures disappear. They're hiding. From us, it looks that way. The implications were staggering. If other civilizations were actively avoiding contact with humanity, it meant the ancient warnings were still being taken seriously. It meant that somewhere in the galaxy, species with technology far beyond human capabilities were afraid of a race that had barely learned to leave its own solar system. Why? Hai-One asked. What could they possibly fear from us? Before Ji-hoon could answer, his communication device chimed with an urgent message. It was from the Deep Space Monitoring Station. Dr. Choi, the voice crackled through the speaker. We're receiving multiple signals from the outer rim. Unknown origin, but they appear to be directed at Earth. What kind of signals? We're not sure. The patterns are unlike anything we've seen before. But sir, there's something else. The signals started immediately after news of the Kepler discovery was transmitted to Earth. Ji-hoon felt a chill run down his spine. How long until we can decode the signals? Unknown, sir. But based on their complexity and the coordination between multiple sources, whoever is sending them has technology far beyond our current capabilities. Multiple sources? Yes, sir. The signals are coming from at least 12 different star systems. All of them systems we had classified as potentially uninhabited. Ji-hoon looked at Hai-One with growing alarm. The ancient warnings about humanity were not just historical curiosities. They were active intelligence that was still being used by civilizations across the galaxy. And now that humans had discovered the warnings, those civilizations were talking to each other about what to do next. Get me everything we have on those signal sources, Ji-hoon ordered, and contact the Space Defense Command. I think we're about to have visitors. The question was whether those visitors would come in peace, or whether they would decide that. The ancient warnings about humanity needed to be acted upon before it was too late. The massive alien ship appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system without warning. It was larger than anything humans had ever built, a crystalline structure that seemed to bend light around its edges. Within hours, 3 more ships joined. Each one representing a different alien civilization. Ambassador Su Jin Han received the emergency call while having dinner with her family in Bizan. As Earth's chief diplomatic officer, she had trained for first contact scenarios her entire career, but she had never expected it to happen like this. "How many ships?" she asked Director Park from the Space Defense Command. 4 confirmed, possibly more. They're maintaining position just outside Neptune's orbit. No hostile actions, but they're scanning everything in the system. Have they tried to communicate? Yes. They transmitted a standard greeting in 17 different languages, including Korean, English, and Mandarin. They're requesting formal diplomatic contact. Su Jin felt her heart racing. After decades of searching for signs of alien life, contact had finally come to them. What do they want? They want to meet. They've proposed a neutral location, a space station they're willing to construct at the midpoint between Earth and Mars. Within a week, the aliens had built a space station unlike anything in human engineering. It was a perfect sphere, 2 kilometers in diameter, with docking ports designed to accommodate both human and alien vessels. They called it Harmony Station. Su Jin arrived with a small diplomatic team, including Dr. Chung-Ho Lee, a psychologist, who specialized in stress responses and adaptation behaviors. Chung-Ho had been chosen for the mission because of his expertise in how different species might react under pressure. The alien delegation was impressive and intimidating. The Astari representative looked like a tall, thin human covered in silver. Scales with large black eyes that seemed to absorb everything. The Grenth delegate was broader and more muscular, with thick skin that changed color based on mood. The Velkari counselor was the most alien of all, floating in a containment field that allowed him to exist in the station's atmosphere. "Welcome," the Astari spoke first, her voice translated by advanced technology that made it sound perfectly. "Human, I am Council Speaker Nalphis. We represent the Galactic Confederation of Civilized Worlds." "Thank you for this opportunity," Su Jin replied. "I am Ambassador Su Jin Han, representing Earth and humanity." "We know who you are," the Grenth delegate rumbled, his skin shifting to an orange color that Chung-Ho noted in his observations. "We know much about your species." "Then you know we come in peace," Su Jin said. The Velkari counselor's skin turned deep blue. "Peace is not our concern. Development is our concern. Growth is our concern. Your species represents a potential threat to galactic stability." Chung-Ho watched the alien delegates carefully. Their body language and color changes suggested they were nervous, even fearful, but not of human weapons or technology. They seemed afraid of something else entirely. "We don't understand," Su Jin said. "What threat could we possibly represent? Your technology is clearly far beyond ours." Nalphis activated a holographic display. "Your species has been observed. Your behavior patterns have been analyzed. You do not follow normal developmental paths." The hologram showed images of human activities across the solar system. Mining operations on asteroids that should have been impossible to reach. Research stations on worlds that should have been too hostile to inhabit. Ships that continued operating long after their design specifications said they should have failed. Most species, when faced with insurmountable obstacles, adapt their goals to match their capabilities, the Grenth explained. You adapt your capabilities to match your goals. Is that wrong? Su Jin asked. It is dangerous, the Velkari replied. Your species does not know when to stop. You do not recognize impossible as a valid concept. The aliens presented their proposal. Humanity would be granted limited expansion rights within the solar system. They would receive access to basic galactic technologies and trade opportunities. In return, they would accept Confederation oversight and agree to restrictions on their growth and development. We offer you protection, Nauthes explained. Safety, stability, the same arrangement we have with 300 other species. Sujin looked at her team, then back at the alien delegates. What if we prefer to earn our place in the galaxy rather than accept charity? The room fell silent. Chung-Ho watched as all 3 alien delegates displayed what he recognized as shock. Responses. Their skin colors shifted, their postures changed, and they exchanged rapid communications in their own languages. No species has ever refused Confederation protection, the Grenth said finally. Then maybe it's time one did, Sujin replied calmly. Chong-Gash, who was fascinated by what he was observing. These aliens represented civilizations that had achieved incredible technological advancement, but their psychological profiles suggested they had lost something important along the way. They showed classic signs of learned helplessness when discussing challenges or obstacles. You don't understand. The dangers, the Valkyrie insisted. Space is hostile. Resources are limited. Conflicts are inevitable. Without guidance, your species will make catastrophic mistakes. We've been making mistakes since we learned to walk upright, Sujin said. That's how we learn. And if those mistakes destroy you, then we'll have learned something important. The negotiations continued for 3 days. The aliens presented detailed analyses of human behavior, pointing out every instance where humans had chosen the difficult path over the easy one. They showed examples of human exploration missions that had succeeded despite impossible odds. They documented human settlements that had thrived in environments that should have been uninhabitable. This is precisely what concerns us, Nauthes explained. Your species treats impossibility as a suggestion rather than a fact. On the 3rd day, Shang-Ho made a disturbing discovery while reviewing psychological profiles of the alien delegates. Every single Confederation species showed identical patterns of risk aversion and dependency on authority structures. They had all, at some point in their development, chosen safety over growth. They're afraid, he told Sujin privately. Not of what we might do to them, but of what we represent. What do we represent? The road not taken. They all chose comfort over challenge at some point in their evolution. We haven't made that choice yet. That evening, pirates attacked Harmony Station. The assault came without warning, as unknown ships emerged from hyperspace and began firing on the station's outer ring. The attack was not particularly sophisticated, but it was violent and chaotic. The alien response was immediate and predictable. Emergency protocols activated throughout their sections of the station. Blast doors sealed, defensive systems engaged, and automated distress signals were transmitted to their respective fleets. Then they waited. The human response was different. Security. Chief Kyung-Soo Park had brought only a small security detail to the diplomatic mission. When the attack began, he didn't wait for orders or follow protocols. He grabbed whatever weapons were available in the human section and began moving toward the source of the attack. Where are you going? Sujin called after him. To stop them, Kyung-Soo replied, as if the answer was obvious. This isn't our fight. It is now. Chung-Ho watched in fascination as the other humans in their delegation immediately began following Kyung-Soo's lead. Engineer Min-ji Park started, calculating ways to sabotage the pirates' equipment. Communications Officer Jae-Hyeon Kim began trying to jam the attackers' coordination signals. Even the diplomatic staff started looking for ways to help. The aliens watched through their security. monitors as the humans fought back against the pirates with improvised weapons and desperate tactics. What should have been a massacre turned into a chaotic melee that ended with the pirates retreating in confusion. "Why did you do that?" Nalthis asked, when the immediate danger had passed. "Do what?" Sujin replied. "Fight. The pirates were not your responsibility. You could have remained safe in your sealed section." "Safe and useless," Kyung-Soo said. "That's not who we are." Chang-Ho saw the fear in the aliens' eyes. They were not afraid of human weapons or aggression. They were afraid of human initiative. They were afraid of a species that would fight impossible. Odds not because they had to, but because they chose to. "The negotiations are concluded," the Valkyrie announced. "You may return to your homeworld. What about the Confederation offer?" "There is no offer. Your species is ... The Valkyrie paused, searching for the right word. "Incompatible with galactic civilization." As the human delegation prepared to leave Harmony Station, Chang-Ho made one final observation. The alien delegates were not relieved that humans had rejected their offer. They were terrified that humanity would continue to exist without their guidance. And somewhere in that terror, Chang-Ho realized, was the answer to why ancient aliens had warned against human contact. It wasn't because humans were dangerous to other species. It was because humans were dangerous to the comfortable, safe, predictable order that those species had built for themselves. The question now was what the galaxy's established civilizations would do about the new species that refused to stay safely contained. The distress signal from Narration Prime reached Earth 6 months after the failed diplomatic meeting. The message was weak and fragmented, transmitted by automated systems on a world that had been written off as uninhabitable for over 1,000. YEARS Dr. Hai Won-Young was the first to decode the transmission in her laboratory in Seoul. The signal described a planetary plague that had killed 90% of the native population. The survivors were scattered in small groups, hiding in underground shelters with failing life support systems. "This is a Confederation frequency," Hai-Won told Director Park from the Space Defense Command. "Why are they sending distress signals to us?" "Maybe they're not," Park replied grimly. "Our intelligence suggests this might be a test." "What kind of test?" "The kind where they see what humans do when faced with an impossible rescue mission." High Counselor Dekmar of the Valkyrie watched the human response from his command ship hidden in the outer system of Narration Prime. The distress signal had been real, but the Confederation had deliberately routed it to Earth through careful manipulation of communication relays. "They received the transmission 4 days ago," his intelligence officer reported. "What do you think they will do?" "If they are wise, they will analyze the situation and determine that a rescue mission is impossible," Dekmar replied. "Narration Prime has a 90% mortality rate for non-native species. The plague is too virulent, the population too scattered, and the planetary conditions too hostile. And if they are not wise," Dekmar's skin shifted to worried blue, "then they will come anyway." The Confederation had spent centuries studying Narration Prime. Every species that had attempted to help the plague victims had failed catastrophically. Some had lost entire expeditionary forces. Others had barely escaped with a handful of survivors. The planet had become a symbol of the galaxy's limitations, a reminder that some problems could not be solved. Dr. Hai Won-Young volunteered to lead the human relief mission within hours of receiving the transmission. Her expertise in galactic anthropology made her the obvious choice to interface with an alien population. But she was not prepared for the response her announcement generated. "I'll go," said Dr. Jin Woo-song, a medic from the Seoul Medical Center. "Count me in," added engineer the Jin Park from the Mars shipyards. "I can handle logistics," offered supply coordinator Seok Jin Roo from the lunar colonies. Within 48 hours, over 300 humans had volunteered for a mission that had a 90% mortality rate. They came from every profession, every background, every corner of human space. Doctors and engineers, pilots and farmers, scientists and artists, all willing to risk their lives for people they had never met. "This is insane," Director Park told High One during the mission briefing. "We're sending volunteers into a death trap." "No one is being forced to go," High One replied. "Everyone understands the risks." "Do they? Do they really understand that most of them won't come back?" High One looked out at the volunteers assembling in the launch bay. Young and old, experienced and inexperienced, all united by a simple belief that someone in trouble deserved help, regardless of the cost. "They understand," she said quietly. "They just don't care." The human fleet that departed for Narration Prime consisted of 5 ships carrying medical supplies, engineering equipment, and enough personnel to establish a permanent relief operation. The Confederation observers were stunned by the scope of the mission. "They're not sending a reconnaissance force," the Grenth military analyst reported to his superiors. "They're sending a colonization fleet to a plague world." Apparently, the journey to Narration Prime took 2 weeks. During that time, High One studied everything available about the planet and its inhabitants. The Naraxians were a humanoid species with advanced biotechnology who had accidentally created the plague while trying to enhance their immune systems. The plague had a peculiar property. It attacked not just biological systems, but also most mechanical and electronic equipment. "How are we supposed to help them if our equipment stops working?" Jin Woo asked during a planning session. "We improvise," High One replied. "We always improvise." Narration Prime was a nightmare world. The atmosphere was toxic, the surface was covered in acidic rain, and the plague had created massive dead zones where nothing could survive. The human ships landed at the coordinates provided by the distress signal, only to find a barren landscape with no signs of life. "The survivors are underground," the Jinn reported, scanning with equipment that was already beginning to malfunction due to plague exposure. Roughly 200 meters down, in what looks like a natural cave system. Life signs? Weak but present. Maybe 50 individuals. Establishing contact with the Naraxian survivors required Jin Woo to enter the cave system wearing a primitive environmental suit. The more advanced equipment had already failed due to plague contamination. When he finally reached the survivors, he found a scene that broke his heart. The Naraxians were a beautiful species, tall and graceful with luminescent skin that had dulled to gray due to plague infection. They lay in makeshift beds carved from stone, tended by a few healthy individuals who were clearly exhausted from months of desperate care. "Why did you come?" asked their leader, a female named Sirena, who spoke broken standard through a failing translation device. "Because you called for help," Jinwoo replied. "Others came. Others died. Why do you think you can succeed?" Jinwoo looked around at the dying Naraxians and made a decision that would have horrified any Confederation medical officer. He removed his helmet, exposing himself directly to the plague. "Because we're not going to leave until we do." The plague's effect on humans was unlike anything documented in Confederation medical records. While it was still dangerous, human immune systems seemed to respond differently to the infection. More importantly, humans seemed to be able to fight off the plague through sheer determination combined with their unique physiology. "It's not just biological," High One reported to Earth during a brief communication window. "The plague responds to psychological factors. The more determined the host, the better they resist infection." "Are you saying humans can think their way out of being sick?" "I'm saying humans can fight their way out of being sick. The plague seems to feed on despair and resignation. Humans don't do either of those very well." Over the following weeks, the human relief mission accomplished something that Confederation experts had declared impossible. They not only treated the plague victims, but began establishing permanent settlements on Neuraxis Prime. When their high-tech equipment failed, they built low-tech alternatives. When their medicines ran out, they synthesized new ones from local materials. When their food supplies dwindled, they started farming in hostile soil. They're not just surviving, the Velkari Observer reported to Vekmar. They're thriving. The plague world is becoming a human colony. How many casualties? 17 dead, 43 seriously ill, but recovering. The rest are healthy and working. Vekmar stared at the reports in disbelief. 17 dead out of 300? On Neuraxis Prime? The humans seem to have found a way to turn the plague into an advantage. Their immune systems are adapting to fight it, and they're using plague-resistant biotechnology to improve their settlements. The final report from Neuraxis Prime reached the Confederation 6 months after the human mission began. The plague had been contained and was being systematically eradicated. The Neuraxian population had not only survived, but was beginning to recover. Most shocking of all, humans and Neuraxians were working together to establish a joint colony that was more prosperous than Neuraxis Prime had been before the plague. This is impossible, Nalface of the Astari declared during an emergency Confederation session. Neuraxis Prime was a death world. Nothing could survive there. Humans survived. There, Vekmar replied. More than survived. They turned a catastrophe into an opportunity. What do we do? The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. For over 1,000 years, Neuraxis Prime had been proof that some problems could not be solved. It had been a justification for the Confederation's conservative approach to expansion and development. If humans could solve the Neuraxis problem, what other impossible challenges might they overcome? The ancient warnings were accurate, Ikmar said finally. Humans are dangerous, not because they will attack us, but because they will prove that everything we believe about limits and impossibility is wrong. Then, what do we do about them? Vekmar's skin shifted through several colors before settling on deep purple. We hope they choose to be merciful when they surpass us. On Neuraxis Prime, High One stood on the observation deck of the new human Neuraxian research station and watched the sunrise over a world that was healing. Jing Wu had recovered from his plague infection and was now working on medical techniques that combined human and Neuraxian knowledge. The Jin had designed new construction methods that turned the planet's hostile environment into an advantage. Dr. Jung, Sirena approached, her luminescent skin now bright with health. I have a question. What is it? Why do humans take on impossible challenges? High One smiled. Because if we don't, they remain impossible forever. In the distance, she could see the Confederation observation ships that had been monitoring the colony. They had been there for months, watching. Dr. Hyen Woo Park made the final discovery by accident. He was cleaning dust from the deepest chamber of the Kepler 442b. Ruins when his tools scraped against what seemed to be solid rock. But the rock gave way, revealing a hidden compartment containing one last tablet. This tablet was different from the others. Where the previous stones had been dark blue, this one was pure white and seemed to glow with its own internal light. The symbols carved into its surface were deeper and more intricate than anything they had found before. So Young, Hyen Woo called to his colleague, you need to see this. So Young Kim hurried down into the excavation site, her translation equipment already powered up and ready. But when she saw the white tablet, she stopped and stared. What is it? Hyen Woo asked. It's beautiful, she whispered, but also terrifying. Look at the symbols. They're not just carved into the stone. They're part of the stone itself. The translation of the final tablet took So Young 3 weeks of continuous work. The language was more complex than the previous tablets, filled with concepts that had no direct equivalent in human speech. But slowly, the meaning began to emerge. "It's not a warning," she announced to the team during their final briefing before returning to Earth. "It's a confession." "What do you mean?" "The progenitors weren't warning other species about humans because they were afraid of what humans would do to the galaxy. They were warning them because they were afraid of what humans represented." The final tablet told the true story of the progenitors. They had been the first species to achieve galactic civilization, spreading across the stars and building perfect societies on thousands of worlds. Their technology was flawless, their government was efficient, and their people lived in comfort and safety. But perfection had come at a cost. The progenitors had eliminated all challenges from their lives. There were no more problems to solve, no more frontiers to explore, no more impossible dreams to chase. They had built paradise and discovered that paradise was a prison. "We built perfect worlds," the tablet read in So Young's translation, "and forgot how to dream. We eliminated suffering and lost the will to grow. We achieved everything we thought we wanted and discovered we had become nothing." The tablet described how the progenitors had watched other species follow the same path. Each new civilization would reach a point where they chose safety over growth, comfort over challenge. And each time, that choice marked the beginning of their decline. They all chose to stop, So Young continued reading. They reached a level of technology and comfort that satisfied their needs, and then they simply stopped growing. They became caretakers of their own stagnation. But then the progenitors had encountered early humans, primitive, violent, struggling creatures who had not yet learned that some things were impossible. And in those early humans, the progenitors had seen something they had lost forever. They built nothing, the tablet read, but learned how to fly. They suffered everything, but never stopped dreaming. They failed constantly, but never stopped trying. They were everything we had been before we became perfect. The tablet revealed that the progenitors' warnings about humanity were not meant to protect other species from humans. They were meant to protect other species from the choice humans represented, the choice between comfortable stagnation and dangerous growth. "We are the past," the final passage read. "They are the future. We fade into comfort. They burn bright with possibility. We have become watchers of our own decline. They will become builders of tomorrow." Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Ji-Hoon Choi was presenting his research to the United Earth Council. His investigation into galactic civilization patterns had revealed a disturbing truth about every advanced species they had encountered. "They're all the same," he told the assembled delegates. "Different biology, different technology, different cultures, but identical psychological profiles. They all made the same choice at some point in their development." "What choice?" asked Council President Kim. "The choice to prioritize safety over growth. They reached a point where they could guarantee their survival and comfort, and they stopped pushing forward. They stopped taking risks. They stopped dreaming of the impossible." Ji-Hoon activated his presentation display, showing psychological profiles of various alien species. The Astari achieved perfect logic and lost the ability to take intuitive leaps. The Grenth achieved perfect security and lost the willingness to explore. The Velkari achieved perfect harmony and lost the drive to change. And humans? Humans have consistently chosen the opposite path. Every time we've been faced with the choice between safety and growth, we've chosen growth. Every time we've been offered comfort in exchange for dreams, we've chosen dreams. On the Velkari homeworld, High Counselor Thekmar faced the most difficult decision of his long life. The reports from Naraxis Prime had convinced the Confederation leadership that humans represented an existential threat to galactic civilization, not through violence or conquest, but through example. "They're proving that our limitations are self-imposed," Counselor Valthara observed during the emergency session. If they can solve the Neuraxis problem, what other impossible challenges might they overcome? More importantly, added Counselor Zarkeith, what will our own people think when they realize we've been choosing comfort over progress for millennia? The Confederation had three options. They could unite to contain humanity through force, but recent events suggested they would likely fail catastrophically. They could continue to avoid contact and hope humans remain contained to their own region of space. Or they could do something unprecedented in galactic history. There is a third option, Ekmar said quietly. We could ask them to teach us. The council chamber fell silent. The idea of an advanced civilization asking a primitive one for guidance was unthinkable. Teach us what? Velthara asked. How to dream again. How to see impossible as a suggestion rather than a fact. How to choose growth over comfort. 6 months later, Ambassador Sujin Han stood before the full assembly of the Galactic Confederation on their capital world. The vast chamber held representatives from over 300 species, all of them watching the human delegate with a mixture of fear and hope. We didn't come here to rule you, Sujin said, her words translated simultaneously into hundreds of languages. We didn't come to conquer or replace you. We came because you asked us a question that we've been asking ourselves for thousands of years. What question? Asked Nalthis of the Astari. How do you build a civilization that grows stronger through challenge rather than weaker through comfort? How do you maintain the courage to dream impossible dreams even after you have the power to make them reality? Sujin activated a holographic display showing images from across human space. Research stations on hostile worlds. Rescue missions to impossible locations. Engineering projects that defied conventional wisdom. And always, humans working alongside alien partners who had chosen to remember what they once were. We don't have all the answers, she continued. We make mistakes. Constantly. We fail more often than we succeed. But we never stop trying, and we never stop growing. The assembly listened as Sujin described the human approach to impossible problems. The willingness to risk everything for a chance at something better. The refusal to accept that limitations were permanent. The belief that any challenge could be overcome if you were willing to pay the price. We're not offering to lead you, she concluded. We're offering to remind you how to lead yourselves. How to be what you were before you chose to be safe. The vote was not unanimous, but it was decisive. 237 species chose to begin what they called the Renaissance Project, a galaxy-wide effort to rediscover the courage to grow and change. They would work with human advisors, not as subjects or allies, but as students learning to remember forgotten dreams. In the depths of space, near the galactic core, an ancient monitoring station registered the Confederation's decision. The station had been waiting for thousands of years, its systems powered by the last energy, reserves of a civilization that had chosen to fade rather than fight. The progenitors were not extinct. They had simply withdrawn to watch and wait, hoping that someday another species would succeed where they had failed, would find a way to build a civilization that never stopped growing, never stopped dreaming, never stopped reaching for impossible stars. As the Renaissance Project began its work across the galaxy, the ancient Watchers sent a single transmission toward Earth. It was brief and simple, transmitted in the same language carved on the tablets of Kepler-442b. Dr. So Young Kim received the transmission at her new research facility on Neuraxis Prime, where she was working with both human and alien archaeologists to uncover more secrets of the ancient past. The message was only 3 words long, but it carried the weight of 50,000 years of waiting. Thank you, finally. Deep in the galactic core, the last progenitor watching stations began powering down their systems. Their vigil was over. The galaxy had found its teachers at last, Humanity had not conquered the stars through superior weapons or technology. They had conquered them through the simple refusal to accept that anything was truly impossible. And in doing so, they had given the galaxy something it had lost long ago, that hope, that future stretched out before them, vast,